Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Lounging with Leonie. I am your host, Leonie. Today's episode, we are talking about women in leadership, and in particular, Asian women in leadership. And I have a very special guest joining me, someone who I highly respect and inspires me and I look up to as a role model. She is the Deputy Mayor and Councillor of Fairfield City Council, one of Australia's most culturally and ethnically diverse suburbs. And she is currently running for the federal election in the seat of Fowler, Liverpool and Fairfield. Introducing DAI.
Thank you, Leonie. Lovely to be here, lounging with you.
Yes, thank you for lounging with me.
Yeah.
Thank you for agreeing to come on.
No, it's great. No, it's a great pleasure. And, I love supporting any initiatives that are led by women, and in particular, women of culturally and linguistically diverse background and also Asian women. So it's good, to have, podcasting with you.
Thank you. So you've had a really interesting history coming to Australia from Vietnam. I'm really interested to hear your journey, I guess, from there to here.
Yeah. Look, my journey is, like many Vietnamese refugees who left Vietnam at the end of the war. Escape really. We fled Vietnam at the end of the war in April 75. My mother and, ran with 3 girls, my 2 younger sisters and myself. My father was somewhere in the war. The Vietnam War, was a long war. And a lot of the men went to war, and so women and children predominantly were left at home. Towards the end of April 75, all I remember was that I was in the front yard riding my tricycle, and from memory, there were men in a military outfit sort of running into the house, into our front yard, and dragging us out and putting us into a little Jeep. When we got there, because we didn't have time to pack or anything, because we were just told to run.
Yeah.
So my mother got into this little Jeep with other women and children.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 7.
Wow,
I was about
really
7
young.
years old. And I remember that Jeep kind of driving through the streets in Saigon, and I can see people running and I can hear people crying. For a 7-year-old who was in the front of her front yard, in a quiet environment, next thing I know, I was here in the middle of chaos, and did not even understood what that chaos was. All I remember was that people were crying, and kids were crying, and women were crying, and people were running. And so we got onto a boat. There were, from memory, there were so many people on that boat. People were kind of dragging people up onto this boat. I think my mother went up first with my 2 younger sisters. I felt like I was the last one up, and so somebody pulled me up. I don't know who was it that pulled me up.
Wow.
And in that chaos on the boat, I couldn't see my mother. I thought, oh my God. I remember thinking, shivers, where is she? Like I was all alone. I was just standing there, couldn't find her. And I think there was that moment of real fear of you're on your own. But then I think my mother found me and grabbed my hand. It was a real strange moment, because I felt like I was lost and I had nobody around me. It felt like I was on a boat. They were all strangers, of course, but you felt really...
Like you're in it by yourself.
Yeah, by yourself. And it was just a real kind of out of place, surreal moment for me, thinking back and remembering that moment, because that was a defining moment, and that impacted my life.
Yeah.
Later on in life, whereby I was on my own. But so we were there. I can't remember how long we were on that boat for. And we got taken to what later was known to us was the camps in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And we got off the boat, and we were taken to camps. Like it was displaced people camps. Found a place on a little floor, and with lots and lots and lots of other families. It was, again, you didn't have a home. You were just floating around, and I suppose you just kind of try not to figure things out, because you got no idea what was going on.
Yeah, that must have been scary, like not knowing what's coming next.
Yeah.
Like, how did you, as a 7-year-old?
Yeah, it was. Look, I think for me, it was almost like you were in a trance and you just,
You just go along with
you
it?
just went along with it. My mother must have been more, I suppose, traumatized for her because she was an adult. But for us young kids, I was the eldest, so I had a sense of what was kind of going on, but still not understanding the context of it.
Yeah.
Right? You were living in this place that's not your home.
Yeah.
You're living or sleeping on the floor with hundreds of other families. You were aware of that. You don't know why that was happening. And then you just know that you're on your own and you just had to make do with what was in front of you.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of really relevant now as well with what's happening in the world. How do you feel about that it's still kind of happening?
Yeah, look, that's interesting. I remember when I first got to Australia, I felt so at peace. I felt like, oh my gosh, finally there'll be no more wars. We've escaped conflict and we're now in Australia, a peaceful country, and that I felt that was the last war, like there'll be no more wars, right? But of course, there have been many wars since then. And I think the most recent war that we are witnessing in the Ukraine, of course, it saddens me as somebody who have lived through a war, and thinking that we're in 2022 and human beings haven't not developed the capability to actually sit down and talk about differences. So rather than talk about the differences and how we can bridge those differences for the betterment of the world and for our community or our society, instead these countries or these governments, predominantly led by men, have led us to war. And so it's really disappointing. It saddens me to see that's happening because once again, I think the innocent people, the mums and the dads and the children and the women are the ones that will be the collateral damage.
Yeah.
So
They're the ones that suffer the most. So do you think the world would be a different place if there were more female leaders running our governments, our businesses?
Look, we have not been there, so it's really hard to say that it could be better. But I believe that if there were more women leaders, I think we'd probably less likely go to war and we would probably sit down and have a conversation. Now, I'm sure people would say, well, actually, there have been women leaders before that have, chosen to go to war, but there were so few of them. And I think because there are so few of them, they actually had to behave and do what the boys would do, right, to prove themselves that they're as good as the boys. So I think the few women who've managed to get onto the world stage, I think could not be a benchmark for us. But I would hope that as women who raise families, or even if they don't have families, they actually have a nurturing side. And women have the ability to, I think, empathize, be more empathetic than men. And I think, generally speaking, we would probably be in a position to say, look, let's have a conversation, a discussion.
Yeah. So when you arrived in Australia, what was that experience like? You came from a totally different country. Did you speak English? And how did you settle in?
Yeah, so when I first came to Australia, it was obviously a foreign land.
Yeah.
I had been living in refugee camps for nearly 4 years. We were living with, in a place with hundreds, if not thousands of people, sharing, meals and sleeping on the same floor together. The camps, they do teach you English. So we did learn, a few words in English, but of course not enough to have a good conversation. But when I got here, I felt, oh my God, it was so peaceful, first of all. And I thought there was hardly anybody around. Australia in 1979, we had just come out of the White Australia policy. Majority of the population were of Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-Celtic. So they're white, fair hair, blue eyes, fair skin. And so I thought, well, this is going to be, my new home now. I've got to learn the language. I've got to learn English very quickly. I remember I wanted to be just a new Australian. I really want to shed off all of the refugee clothes that I was wearing, figuratively speaking as well as literally speaking,
Yeah.
right? By the time I got here, I was about 11. So we were enrolled into the local schools, and I just was so excited to be able to go to school because we did not have proper schooling for those 4 years.
Yeah.
I went to school. It was scary because obviously I was the only Asian
Yeah.
looking kid in the whole class. There were European, second generation Europeans, because like from Italian background or Maltese or Greeks and Polish, whose parents arrived after the Second World War. So they were born here, but they looked the same as the rest, right? So I was the only one that had black hair, olive skin, and almond eyes. So
Yeah.
I stood out.
Did that impact your self-esteem in any way or how you viewed yourself?
I think I was so excited to be in Australia. I wanted to be a new Australian.
Yeah.
I wanted to blend in, right? And I was eager to be part of this new society. It was scary in a sense that I couldn't speak the language because my focus was on learning the language.
Yeah.
And the focus was to try to be a new Australian. That was my focus. There was nothing else. And as a result of that focus, that enabled me to learn the language very quickly. And because there weren't many other Asians around, the school or the students weren't feeling threatened.
Right.
And they were actually more embracing of me.
I see. Oh, that's so good.
Like it was like, oh, this poor refugee.
We have to take care of
We
her.
have to take care of her.
Yeah.
Because I was the only one in my class. It was more understanding in those days, I think, because there weren't that many Asians. So I think people weren't that, I think we were seen as an exotic and,
There wasn't this narrative about like Asians are taking over.
Exactly.
Kind of
Look, I'm sure there was in terms of, we had come out of the White Australia policy.
That's true, yes.
So there was that whole of fear of the yellow perils from the north. But I think because we were refugees, Vietnamese refugees, we were different to that, the yellow peril from the north. And so I think that's probably the reason why, the community wanted to help refugees. And so we weren't seen as a threat.
Yeah. So did you experience any sort of racism in your school days in Australia?
Yeah, people have asked me that questions over the years. There have been moments where, they were kind of saying slanty eyes or whatever. I don't know. I never took that to heart. I never felt offended by that.
Yeah.
Probably in my psyche, I was really thinking I'm a new Australian.
Yeah. Like you already knew.
I knew who. I thought, I'm a new Australian. Interestingly, though, as I got older, it's when it became more. I became more conscious that I actually am Asian. Right. Whereas when you were young, you kind of didn't. To me, I didn't feel that. Maybe that period it wasn't.
Maybe. I know my brother probably also experienced similar to you where he didn't feel the racism when he came to Australia.
Yeah.
But me having grown up here, I was also one of the few Asians in my public school. And I remember I felt different. There was a girl who came up to me and I wanted to be friends with her. And she told me, I don't want to be friends with you because you're Asian. And I think that definitely impacted how I saw myself growing up. Like I wanted to fit in. I wanted to have the blonde hair, the blue eyes. And also because on media, in Australian media, you don't see a lot of Asian representation, especially back in those times. So it's interesting to see how
the different generations
I think
perspective.
so.
Yeah, look, I think, like I said, I think it's more evident to me now, having worked in the media, having in the public sphere, you can see that definitely there's a lack of representations in terms of Asian representations or people of colour in media or in any leadership role. So therefore, I can see it now more. And as a result of that, it's certainly kind of, as a person of Asian background or of a coloured background, coloured person, you think, well, can I make it if there's nobody there that looks like me? And
exactly,
it doesn't give you the confidence that it can happen, and you can't turn to somebody to mentor you or to guide you because there's nobody that looks like you or who've had the same experience as you. So today I see that more. It's more pronounced for me.
Well, that's why I really admire you, because you got into journalism after university, was it?
Yeah, so I got into journalism So I was supposed to study law, and as most kids of Asian background, parents expect them to study law or become a doctor or an accountant. I managed to get into do law for about 3 months, and then I dropped out of law.
So what was it about journalism that attracted you?
My sister introduced me to this journalist, and we were having coffee, and he goes, so what do you do? I said, oh, look, I've just started waitressing, and I've just trying to figure out what to do. And I don't know, in that coffee kind of conversation, he goes, I think you'd be a great journalist. And I said, oh, really? What is journalism? I mean, growing up, you weren't told you can be a journalist by your parents. The arts is not something that they encourage. And I said, what is a journalist do? He goes, well, you go and you meet different people, you interview them, you come back, you write. And he goes, I think you got a personality for it. You talk and you're very, out there. I said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought to myself, oh my God, I didn't know you can go and talk to people and get paid and come back and write something and get paid for it. I said, yeah, absolutely. And he goes, there is a cadetship, an ethnic cadetship actually, for Liverpool, because it's becoming a very culturally diverse community, that they're looking for an ethnic cadetship. And I said, an ethnic? I said, and I thought back in those days, ethnic as in natives, right? An ethnic. Yeah. I'm thinking, oh, but I'm not an ethnic. I'm an Australian. Because I know you're of an ethnic background, aren't you? Like you've got Vietnamese background. I said, oh yes, I've got Vietnamese background. He goes, well, that's an ethnic. I said, oh, so that's the moment when I realised that actually I wasn't, perceived as an Australian. I was perceived as an ethnic.
Something different.
Yeah, up until that point, I saw myself as an Australian, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, oh, so I'm an ethnic. Okay. He goes, yeah. So you should apply for this cadetship. I think you'll get it. Let me talk to the editor. I'll go back and talk to him. And he did. He went back to the editor. And I can't remember how, but I got called into the office to meet with this editor. And he looked at me. He goes, oh, I heard you can write, and I heard that you'd like to apply for the job. I said, yes, I'd like to be an ethnic journalist. That day, I think I brought in some of my writing because I was at uni. So he goes, well, can you show me some of your writing? So I brought my essays. I think it was a taught essay to write about a legal piece. And I brought it in. He looked at it. He goes, oh, no, that's not writing, but you can write. So that's okay. That will do.
That'll do.
That'll do, right?
We need an ethnic journalist. Anything will do.
That's an ethnic, exactly. So, and he goes, well, would you like the job? I said, yes.
Amazing.
But nowadays, to get into cadetship or getting a job in a local newspaper or even a media organisation is challenging. But he said, okay, so when can you start? Can you start next week? I said, yes, So, I was so excited. I don't care whether I'm an ethnic or whatever they want to call me. But for me, it was the first job.
Yeah.
And to really explore this job that you supposedly go and meet people, interview them and come back and write.
Yeah.
So I thought that's a great profession that I never knew existed. So, so that's how my journalism career started.
So as your job, did you have to interview, like what does an ethnic journalist do that's different to?
Yeah, so basically for an ethnic journalist, my task was to engage with the diverse community. I would cover stories that involved a family that is, obviously ethnic back in those days were predominantly the new refugees, the Vietnamese, the Indo-Chinese who've arrived. So, so whenever there's a story that involves somebody who is of Asian background or of an ethnic background, they sent me to cover it. The editor called me and he goes, you're going out to cover your first story. I said, oh, exciting, He goes, it's a death knock. And I said, a death knock?
That sounds...
I said, what's a death knock? Right? I didn't know what a death knock was. He goes, well, you have to go and get a story of how this woman family feels because the son got run over, I think by a truck, or there was an accident and the son died.
Oh.
And I looked at him and I said, but if the son died, that means the family's in mourning. I don't think I can actually go and talk with them, because in our culture, it's you got to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
You're a journalist, you go and get that story.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, oh, okay. Thinking, it was my job.
Yeah.
So I went to this house. I remember knocking on the door ever so softly so that they don't hear me.
Yeah.
And I thought, please, no, don't open the door. Please let it be there's no one at home, because I did not want to interview her.
Yeah.
I just knock. Did no one open the door? I kind of knock a little bit louder again. And I thought, after I'm thinking, maybe there's nobody there. I can just say there's nobody there, right?
Yeah.
And I think I was about to leave when the door opened. And I thought, oh no!
This is the moment.
And this is thinking, oh God. I remember that was so, my heart was just like on in my throat. And I kind of so apologetic. And said, it was a woman. I said, I'm so sorry. I know that your son just died, but I know that you need to, have time to mourn. And I was speaking half in English, because I didn't know what background she was. She was of Asian background, but I didn't know what background she was.
Yeah.
I thought she was going to shut the door, right, and tell me off how disrespectful I was to interview her at the time when her son's death. But then she opened the door. She could come in, and she sat me down. I remember her pulling the photo of her son out. She gave me the photo, and, I think a story was about a warning about when you ride your bike and you need to be careful and all that stuff. And, she's escaped, from memory, I think it escaped Pol Pot regime and rebuilt her life here with her, family. But, of course, it's her son. So can you imagine a son in an Asian family is a big deal. So, of course, she was mourning so much. But she said, thank you for coming. I want to help others to understand that, you have to be careful on the road and all that stuff. So I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I went back. I gave the photo. I said, I got a photo. He goes, oh, how did you get the photo? Like, she gave me the photo. He goes, well done, So that was the death knock. And that story gave me the confidence that I can actually do more. I mean, every time you go out to do a story in the early years, you still get nervous because you don't know if you're doing the right thing, right? Especially being an ethnic reporter. So you got to make sure that you're asking the right questions and treating, for me anyway, treated people respectfully and being courteous when I ask questions. So, because that was me, that was my value. So I wasn't the type of foot in the door kind of journalist, but I brought with me my Vietnamese culture, which is to be very, very respectful of people.
Yeah, and empathetic as well.
Yeah.
Do you think being from an ethnic background helps you to understand different cultures better?
Oh, absolutely. I think coming from a cultural diverse background, in my case, being a refugee, being a Vietnamese, you have the understanding of what it's like to be different. And therefore, whoever else who've got different ethnic background or different cultural backgrounds to you, you understand that they also have experienced that being different. So I think absolutely, I think you might not relate to every cultural nuances of that person, but the one thing is that we have similar shared experiences of having to learn English, having to adapt to a Western society, having to adapt to a mainstream system that is stacked against us, right? So you know that's what kind of can bring you together.
Is that a reason why you got into politics? Like, why did you want to get into politics?
Oh, yeah.
This is a big question.
Big question. I got into politics. I really, people have asked me this, why did you get into politics? Actually, I got into it by accident because I was 2 decades as a storyteller, as a journalist, and I enjoyed that very much. But after nearly 20 years telling stories, you do find that you are telling the same story again and again. It's just with different characters. So I felt like there must be something more than just revisiting the same story. I feel like the stories that I was covering have not really changed the world. The world has not changed as a result of the stories that I have produced or I have reported on or others have reported on. I felt like we kind of Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And I thought, where can I make an impact? How can I make a profound impact? And I actually was moving into writing a feature film script. Back in those days when I was working and living out in Cabramatta, there were issues around gangs, street gangs and drugs problem in the community, and in particular the Vietnamese street gangs. And I felt that the media and our elected leaders did not have a deep understanding of the community, and as a result they were demonizing the whole community. And I thought there must be a way to highlight that the issues is deeper than that. It's not just those street kids going out there, and not that I'm condoning it, but we need to understand where the problem
the whole
started,
story,
the root, that's right, the problem. And so I thought maybe a feature film would be a better option to tell the story at a bigger level, right?
Yeah.
So I was learning to do that. And then just by accident, I just, stumbled into politics. It wasn't something like I sat there and I planned and I thought, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into politics. Not at all. Politics was not even on my radar.
Yeah.
It wasn't on my radar at all.
Now, when we look at our political system, I think a lot of people have kind of lost a bit of hope there.
Oh, look, and I think that when I made a decision to step into politics, that was my motivation, is that I felt that our political system wasn't as representative as it's supposed to be and wasn't as empathetic as it should be. A lot of our elected representatives get elected in order to fulfill their own agenda rather than actually going in to solve a problem and actually delivering on an outcome. And I felt that the elected representatives just treated the community like second-class citizens.
Yeah.
I thought, my God, you get money from the community through the rates and yet you're not giving anything back.
When I think about our governments now, it's like there's so much that we can do better, but like how do everyday people make that difference?
Yeah, look, it's a lot of, as we said, people are very cynical. They become very resigned and cynical about politics.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing it more and more nowadays than before. But social media, while there are downside to social media, there's also an upside in terms of it has made people more aware of politics, more engaged in politics. I think it has also allowed people to keep those politicians accountable. Because whatever you now promise or you say you do is on social media. So therefore, whatever you promise or you say you're going to do, if you don't do it, you'll pay the price.
Yeah.
The good side is that people are more aware, people can get engaged, and people can realize the power of their one vote. But then human beings being human beings, a lot of us often feel that it's only one vote. It's not going to make a difference, right? And they're still so cynical, so they're still not going to do the things that can make that change. But that one vote, when you actually tell 10 of your friends to say, hang on, we can make a difference here, then that 10 friends will tell 10 of their friends. There is a ripple effect.
Everyone has an influence.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but it starts from that one vote, from that one person to influence 10. I always encourage people to read up about who it is that they're going to go to vote for. Is that person genuine? Is that person authentic? People can say, oh, there's no such thing as authenticity and genuineness in politics because they're all there for themselves. But look, I think there are a few individuals that want to have, authentic conversations. They're empathetic towards the community and they really want to make a difference. But the majority of them are very noisy. So therefore, those few can't break through that barrier. So I think it's important when the people choose who they want to represent them, they need to look at that person, what they've done, the policies, what they have delivered is important, what they have delivered for the community, and if they've been active in supporting and helping that community. I think for people, or I ask them, is that don't be cynical, don't be resigned, don't think that your one vote doesn't matter, because it does.
Yeah.
And start from there.
It's also about being involved in the community as well, I think. if you
Yeah.
are involved in the community, you do
Yeah.
have a bit more influence.
Yeah, and I think our ethnic communities increasingly we're participating more in community activities such as volunteering or even helping out at campaigns. But before that, our parents' concern focus has been work hard, make money, buy a house, ensuring that your kids get a roof over their heads, and make sure that their kids are also working hard, saving money, getting married, having kids, and having a house. So that's what the majority of families from a culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds do. Is that that's what they expect of their kids.
Yeah.
But I think increasingly some of the young people are now seeing that, hey, we want to do more than just what our parents want us to do, and we want to be more involved in some capacity to shape the world that we live in. I'm hopeful that in the next 10 to 20 years, more young people would be more proactive in being an ambassador of some sort in the community, stepping up, stepping out and stepping up. I would say stepping out of their comfort zone, stepping out of their cultural barriers and what their parents expect of them, and stepping up to challenges that's there in the community.
Yeah, that's really admirable, because I feel like the western suburbs of Sydney often get neglected a lot. So I feel like if no one's going to stand up for us, we have to stand up for us.
Exactly. You know, I spoke to a woman recently about, for instance, the NDIS, which is a scheme that's supportive of families with special needs and with, people who've got children with disability or people with disability. And she said that, she's from the West, but she said when she went to the northern and eastern suburbs, people who are on NDIS there has managed to get packages of about $40,000, $90,000 packages, right? But here, the maximum probably to get is probably 10,000 or 12,000,
Wow.
and or even 20,000 if max.
Yeah.
She goes, the discrepancy is so huge. And I said, why was that? She goes, because if you live in the eastern suburbs and the northern suburbs, you have the money to take your kids or your to specialists, right? And you have to pay up front, and it can cost up to $40,000 to $90,000 to care for somebody with special needs. And with that amount of money, they can go and justify with NDIS that that's how much money they need for their package. Whereas over here, people don't have first of all, they're not aware that they can do that, and they should go and do that. But even if they're aware, then they don't have the money to go and get specialists and get all of the assistance to then have evidence that this is how much it costs for them to care and raise a person with disability. So those kind of things have meant that the West, in the western suburbs, and especially the southwest, where predominantly are migrants and ethnic refugees families, they won't be aware of that. They're not aware of that. So how do they get to have some kind of equitable share in that pie that's there for everybody? My hope is that that's what we're waking up to, and that we can't be taken for granted by all of these do-gooders or people who will say, oh, elect me, I will go out there and I've got this strong experience to fight for your needs, when they're not from the area and they don't even know what our needs, or they have not lived through what the communities out here have lived through.
Yeah. How would you go about breaking that bias, I guess?
To create change, you have to be the change that you want to see. Isn't that Muhammad, the Gandhi saying, be the change that you want to see. And I used to think, how can I be the change that I want to see? And I realize now that if you want somebody to speak up for the community, then you have to do it, right? If nobody's doing it, then you need to do it. You need to then go out there and start that change. There's this clip, I don't know if you've ever seen it, and it's a clip of a guy dancing in a park. I don't know if you've seen it.
I don't think I have.
Okay.
I will look for it.
So he's dancing, and it's a funny film, like somebody shot it, like a kind of, and he was dancing, and he goes, what does leadership mean? And he goes, watch this guy. And he stand up and he was dancing, and he goes, the actual leader is the guy second, when he stood up to then follow this guy to dance. And then the next group thought, oh, well, these two who are dancing, why don't we stand up and dance? So then suddenly the whole crowd was dancing. So the first guy is a crazy guy.
Yeah.
So I see myself as a crazy guy. The second guy is the leader who actually say, hang on, I'm going to follow, and I'm going to make sure that that I'm going to get others to follow me. And so, it takes a crazy person to then create leadership. And then, so for me, it takes one person to make that crazy move. And they might not see the actual change yet, but then if they can get a second person to follow them, that's when change happens. When there's suddenly, you get to the point of what, I think Malcolm Gladwell said, the tipping point.
Yeah.
And so you have to just go out and just give it a go and break the bias yourself.
Yeah.
Be the breaking the bias.
The bias breaker.
Bias breaker. Be the bias breaker.
Well, I think what you're doing is incredible. I can already see the ripple effects of what you're doing, inspiring so many other people out there, especially myself.
Thanks.
What is
Leonie.
That's okay. It's true. I don't personally see a lot of, firstly, women in leadership roles, but especially Asian women in leadership roles. And I'm really curious as to what you think, why that is. Like, why aren't Asian women stepping up?
Look, I think being a woman and being an Asian woman, you have family expectations, filial obligations. As a daughter, as a wife, you're supposed to care for your family, raise your family, look after your husband, look after the household. And so you have so much responsibilities, not just your own household, but your extended household, So that's one, that's that cultural expectations. I think the second point is that for a lot of Asian women, we're not aggressive, right? We're not pushy. We've been raised to be respectful. We've been raised to just know our place in the household, know our place in society. Don't put ourselves out there. So there's that upbringing, the expectations. The cultural clash is there between West and East.
Yeah.
It's that we don't talk about it that much, but there is a huge clash. The two cultures, the expectations on women. So therefore, not many Asian women would want to step into leadership because there's too much to do to become a leader, to navigate through that leadership journey, because you need to be networking with your colleagues at work, if it's an office one, or even in politics. You have to take time out to go to functions, network, events. You got to learn how to play some sort of politics, relationship wise, building, and who do you hang around with, who you not hang around with, all of these things that. And I've spoken to some Asian, not just women, but also men, they said, it's too complicated.
Yeah.
They don't have the time for that. They don't have the time for that. But to be a leader, to want to be a leader, to aspire to that, you have to know, you have to be willing to learn, to navigate that leadership ball game. And, I don't think our parents have ever said to us, you know what, darling? You can be a leader.
Yeah.
That you can be a Prime Minister of Australia. That you can be the CEO of your company.
That's true. Usually it's like, so when are you going to have kids?
Yeah.
When am I going to see grandchildren?
Exactly. You've neglected your son. Why aren't you at home? You're going to too many functions. You're not being paid enough. The other thing is you're paid.
Yeah.
Pay. Is that our parents said, that's not a good job because you're not being paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
So there's no money there. So why are you spending time, working into the night? You should be home with your kids. You're home with your husband. Why do all of that? So there are all of these barriers that have been placed on us, sometimes unconsciously, that makes it that made us not think about achieving or aspiring to leadership roles. But I think I'm hoping that's changing.
I think it's changing.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely I want to make an impact with my career as well. So I can see it definitely changing. And I feel like women are so much more capable than men.
Yes, I know. I'm sure the men who are listening to this,
I love you, but
we know that they can contribute, and they have contributed greatly to building the world for the last thousands of years, predominantly men, and we've seen that there are more wars, not less wars.
Exactly.
So therefore we need to see more women to test it. Look, they might say, well, women can't say that it's better, but let's test it. Let's test it, have more women in leadership roles to see if we will have a world that is not just focused on profits, a world that's not just focused on wars and kind of winning, but a world that's focused on, okay, how do we benefit, make some profit, but have some good business that will impact lives, that will transform lives, that will have a better world, that's create a better environment, that will live longer, that will have a longer world, a longer planet, right? So I am sure that we can, as women, we can make that happen. And I hope so. I'm hoping, I mean, I have a son, and, you know, my son, I hope that he will not be of the same vintage as the men in the old, you know, back in the old era. I think the young men today are more respectful, are more considerate, are more embracing of differences, and can still speak and give their peace of mind and give their opinion, but in a respectful way.
What would your advice be for women and Asian women who want to become leaders or want to, challenge the status quo?
I suggest go and challenge it, but be prepared that there'll be times when you'll come up against a brick wall. You'll come up against, people who are very aggressive, who are mean, who are vindictive. But let not that discourage you from continuing to push through. I always say, be a humble leader. I don't think we see enough of humble leadership. I'd love to see more young women being bold, but ensuring that they're humble, because without humility, your boldness can make you become arrogant. So I think have confidence. Absolutely, know that you are worth it. Know your worth. Know that what you're contributing is worth it. But also know that at the end of the day, we will all die, and we'll all kind of rot in if you choose to be buried, rot the same way. And, if we cut ourselves, we have the same colour, blood, which is red. And so I think that as women, don't let what you look like, don't let your culture background stop you from dreaming the biggest dream that you can possibly dream. And pursue that with your heart and soul. Don't get bitter if it doesn't work out the first time. Be prepared to fall. For me, it's failures is what actually makes you a good person and makes you humble. If you don't fail, if you do it constantly winning, you will not know what it feels like to fall and what it feels like not to have. So I really encourage young women to aspire to leadership roles and know that it's a challenge if you set that goal that high, but don't give up and remain humble.
In the world now, I feel like there is definitely like a big divide in terms of how people view the world, and especially in politics, it's all about us against them. There is no unity. And I feel like we definitely need some sort of unity if we're going to solve any of the world's problems. How do you unify people from different ends of the spectrum?
Yeah, it's hard to unify people because I think over the decades, social media and media have created, and politicians, our leaders, have created the them and us mentality. For me, it's about what is our common goal. And I think how to bring people together is looking for that common goal. And that common goal is that we all want to have the opportunity, the opportunity to work, the opportunity to raise our family in a safe environment, and provide them with a good standard of living. Because for people like my family, we've come here with nothing, and the migrants and the refugees, all they want is that they've got the opportunity to provide, to give their families a good standard of living. You as a government or an elected representative, your responsibility is to provide people with the opportunities to have a life that is worth living for them. Right? A life that's why they came to this country for. If everyone think, how can I do good? How I can provide good service? How I can actually live a purposeful life? Then I think if we are so intentional and purposeful, we can have a better world.
So what is your hope for the future? Not just for, the world or, Australia, but also like your local community. What do you want to see happen?
My dream and I would manifest this is that, as you said at the beginning, I am contesting the seat of Fowler.
Mm-hmm.
And my dream is that the people will vote for me in, and that they place their trust in me being a real person that will actually work in their interest and not in the political party's interest. And that when I get into Parliament, I bring in the resources for the community, and that our area becomes this vibrant, innovative, productive and cohesive and diverse. We are already diverse, but celebrating our diversity, taking it to a level whereby we are the envy of the country.
I love that because, I think often when we turn on the TV or look through social media, it feels like these leaders are telling us what to do, and you don't see them being involved like at the community level. So I love what you're doing, being out in the community, actually listening to what people want and helping us to,
because I see that I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I'm one of, I'm one of the community. I'm a member. I live and I breathe it, and I don't see myself as somebody out there and coming in, or somebody just being a representative. I'm actually living and breathing their issues, their lives, and I know what it's like. I know their struggles, and I want to ensure that they're not going to struggle as much. I mean, I cannot eliminate some of the struggles because it's so systematic, but I want to ensure that that will be ease as long as I'm in Parliament, and as long as I'm representing them. I will make sure that their life and their livelihood will be easier.
I think one thing that we can all agree on is that we want to live, a healthy life.
And the mental health issue, the constant negative, the constant pressures that's been placed on families is causing a huge amount of mental health pressures in our community, and I'm sure in others, but in particular in our community, because they can't express themselves, they can't find the help that they need because English is their second language. So how do we ensure that those families who are living in a cramped house of 10 people, how can I make life better for them? That's my goal.
Yeah. Well, it takes one person to lead and then another person to follow. So all the best of luck.
Thank you, Leonie.
I have a snack here.
Yes. I know, I've been eyeing that snack.
This is I know, my stomach has been grumbling too. We should have had food before. This is the ASMR
honey,
section.
butter, chips.
So this is a Korean snack. Some people don't quite like the flavour, but it is sweet. I don't know what it's called. Honey butter chip. What do you think? You like it?
I really like it. Oh, look, I love food. I love to taste anything.
Oh my gosh, the Fairfield area has like the best food.
Very nice. Wow. So it tastes honey. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, me again. It tastes like it's got a bit of honey and butter. Salty. Look, I think for us Asians, we eat these kind of things all the time easily.
Yeah.
But if you give it to a Westerner,
They'll be like, what?
they can say, what? Salty and honey and butter?
It's because our taste buds are so diverse.
Very diverse. Oh, very unique.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, actually. Very nice.
Yeah, it's good. Where can people find you on social media?
On social media, obviously, I'm on Instagram. It's daily_inspo, like daily inspo.
I love it, the pun.
Yeah, I know the pun. A friend of mine, actually, I have to thank Kath and Dunn. She suggested that to me, and I said, oh, okay. So it's DAILE_inspo. So it's basically daily inspo, right? Also on Facebook, I've got Deputy Mayor for Fairfield, DAI. That's my on Facebook. On Twitter, it's DAI_Lee. And then I'm actually on TikTok.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I'm on TikTok. As Daily Inspo as well. Daily underscore Inspo.
Amazing.
And of course on LinkedIn as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very, you know, they Google me and they'll
Yeah.
find me on Google.
She's easy to find.
I
Easy
don't
to
hide.
reach out to.
I don't hide from anybody. Sometimes my mobile phone is actually public. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but people reach out to me on that phone number. And of course, I'm on Fairfield City Council,
Yeah.
where I'm very easily reachable as well.
I think it's great that you're able to reach out to, people who are representing you. That's so important.
Yeah, no, people often said to me, you know what, you're the most approachable, reachable person. Like, you respond so quickly as well.
Yeah, I love
I
that.
said I can respond quickly now, but when I have too many, sometimes I can't. But I always try to get back to people within 48 hours.
I feel like it's definitely a high pressure job. How do you actually decompress and strip
Oh, well, I decompress by, so I do a ritual at the moment. So I've got a little room in my house where I wake up in the morning, I go there, my dogs follow me, sit there, and I put on my either meditation music or tranquility music on Spotify and sit there and just look at the trees outside in the sky and do check my social media a little bit, but just relax, not have to work. And then I also do exercise. I do online exercise. I try to do it 3 to 4 times a week. I love my Pilates online. So if you do want to do something with me online, go to check out my online exercising with do it yourself personal training, DIYPT. I make sure that I exercise because it is very stressful on being in politics. It's a lonely game as well. It's not. It's a very lonely journey because you don't know who to trust. There are very few people that you can trust in politics. That's the sad thing about it.
Yeah.
I want to build a culture of trust. For instance, I got Kevin Lamb elected, and I'm going to ensure that he and I will build a culture whereby it's a collaborative culture, a culture of conversation and communication, effective communication, a culture whereby we encourage others to get elected and not play games, because there's a lot of game playing in politics.
Yeah, I think anyone can see that.
So it's just so, and it makes people less trusting of politicians because of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if politicians realize that.
Yeah.
The more that people play, the more that they play games, the more that people think,
They get cynical.
F you.
Yeah.
Like, why would I vote for either one of you? Because that's all you guys do.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we will see a new class of elected representatives being elected, but that's up to the people, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me on the lounge, DAI.
Thank you for letting me lounge with you, Leonie.
That's okay. How do you say thank you in Vietnamese?
Cảm ơn.
Cảm ơn.
Cảm ơn.
Cảm ơn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you say it in Chinese?
谢谢.
谢谢.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's it.
so good. Thank you everyone for watching this episode. Don't forget to vote for Daily and follow her, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.